Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned. Albino ranks every crystal challenge in Crash Bash from easiest to hardest. I went back and played this game on stream for a drinking game and it reignited my passion for throwing TNTs and kicking balls around. So after ranking all the minigames from worst to best in my last video, we're now turning our attention to the crystals. These challenges introduce a modifier to the gameplay, usually weighted against you to make it harder to win, but that's not always the case, as we'll see, starting from easiest and working our way to hardest. Number 28, Tilt Panic. The easiest crystal challenge in Crash Bash is Tilt Panic because it functions identically to the regular minigame. The arena tilts more aggressively in random directions, but because it goes back and forth so often, it pretty much just equalizes out and makes no difference. You're just playing Tilt Panic again. Grab a lightning bolt and enjoy your free win. Number 27, Snow Bash. Another minigame that is effectively not any different. Snow Bash's crystal makes your shoes more slippery, but if you stay jumping around like you'd be doing in the regular level anyway, it's all the same. Just run up and hit the penguin if nobody's done it and sit back and watch the minigame play itself. Number 26, Drain Bash. It's Drain Bash, but if you spin the power-up crates, you instantly die for no reason, so you have to pick one up and throw it to break it instead. I assume this is meant to make it harder for you to get power-ups, but since everyone goes to their nearest box anyway and they rarely encroach on your territory, you still have plenty of time to pick up your power-up after you toss it, assuming you got one, which is up to the same RNG as ever. Hardly a change, easy crystal. Number 25, Space Bash. This crystal can be harder depending on which character you're using, since they disable your ability to throw crates altogether. But big spinners like Crash, Coco, Dingodile, and Rillaroo won't care, and you really don't need to kick stuff too far anyway, since it blows holes in the floor just the same. This is my favorite crystal challenge in Crash Bash. They replaced all the regular boxes with TNTs and Nitros, so you can have way more fun destructioning the floor and then meleeing people into it. You won't need to replay this to get the crystal, but you'll want to, because it's so fun. Number 24, Jungle Bash. Alright, we got all the bashes out of the way. This mode is just inherently easy because it's an easy game type, but Jungle Bash at least keeps you a little on your toes. Nitros are raining down from the heavens onto whatever your current position is, but you can use this to your advantage by weaving amongst your enemies to get them in the blast zone. A real challenge would be completing this without picking up or spinning a single crate and just using the Nitros to do your dirty work. Wonder how that would go. Number 23, Manic Panic. The second easiest of the panics, Manic's crystal starts you out maidenless with no one to ride, but it's okay because you can still pick up every single bomb and blow everyone up instead. Just circle the arena and avoid aggroing anyone until you've got payload in hand, and there's always lightning to fall back on. Number 22, Desert Fox. This is basically just regular Desert Fox, but with it highly inadvisable to leave the outer layer of track unless absolutely necessary. In the middle is a submarine scope that pops up and rotates around, and when it faces your direction it lobs a bomb that deals an absurd amount of damage, but if you're on the outside and still moving when it launches, it won't hit you. Some of this will boil down to how lucky you get with the damage the enemies do to each other and whether they pincer attack the hell out of you, but I beat it first try and didn't feel too pressed. Number 21, Metal Fox. I'm honestly not even sure what the gimmick is here because nothing happened during my attempt, but since the mines are a different color, I assume you're really not supposed to get hit by them. In any case, whether they one-shot you or just hurt a lot, you can just play a good round of Metal Fox and win a crystal by accident. Mines aren't hard to dodge unless the AI accidentally works together to trap you, which isn't too much of a risk, and if it really comes down to it, I haven't tested this, but in theory, if you're about to get hit by a mine, you might try quickly shooting yourself instead at the right time to see if it nullifies the damage. Number 20, Keg Kaboom. As I said in my last video, I do not fully understand how this game works, but as long as you hold square the whole time and periodically run over a flame source, you've got a 75% chance at winning. The crystal challenge here is that there is now a walking bomb that circles the outer edge of the arena, and if you are ever in the same quadrant that it's patrolling, it will hop off and instantly demolish you with a fail. It's possible to bait the bomb at the edge of its radius and dodge the explosion if you're fast, but there's no real point to doing that because it respawns after a few seconds. Basically just never take your eyes off the bomb and move in the opposite direction on the other side and you'll get it in a few tries. Number 19, Splash Dash. It's Splash Dash, but all the stuff with the obstacles in the middle is sped up, which actually doesn't really make a difference because A, it's happening to everyone, so you're not at a disadvantage, and B, if you get knocked off, it would have happened anyway. But even though it doesn't add any new challenge really, Splash Dash is still harder than some other games because it's just harder to win by default. You know how Dash games go, you get knocked off once and it starts a domino effect, except you are all of the dominoes, getting knocked off over and over again by opportunistic bitches who just happen to be skirting on by. I still like Dot Dash and Toxic Dash, but the rest of these wear out my patience by being too samey. Number 18, Toxic Dash. Speak of the dirty devil, Toxic Dash's crystal makes sense, and I like it. Basically, anytime you fall off or get hit by a blob, your engine will get this thick sludge stuck in it for a few seconds that drastically lowers your acceleration and makes you a prime target to be, you guessed it, knocked off again. But but if you hug the inner ring and just never get knocked off, you won't even notice a difference. Obviously that's a lot to ask the gods of RNG and circumstance, but I wasn't frustrated by this challenge and got it in a couple tries. Number 17, Pogo A Go-Go. Hot take, this challenge is not that hard and it's infinitely more fun than the base minigame. For the crystal here, you're trying to get the most amount of points in one single score. Subsequent scores don't matter, all that matters is whatever the highest number you popped was the whole time. This is easily achievable by just acquiring boots and running around the entire area, hopefully getting multiple boots in one burst, and just making sure you don't close any loops until you're ready for the huge payoff. You only need one high score, so if it takes the entire time limit to set up, then so be it. I won with a score of 28. I would have been more comfortable with at least 30, but you can do your part to paint over other people's squares too if you see too many of a certain color just to keep it from going out of control. Number 16, Dot Dash. Dot Dash Crystal Challenge is just a win without getting hit by a missile, which has the potential to be annoying, but I find that I'm a lot more likely to get booted off the stage instead of shot at, so missiles aren't a huge concern. If anyone near you gets one, make sure to stay behind them or give them a little love tap if you're trying to pass. Your own missiles can't ricochet back and fail you the challenge either, so don't worry about that. Number 15, Jungle Fox. For this crystal, instead of the totems hopping off and ass-crashing you, they remain connected in the middle and just rotate around, shooting little fiery dung balls at you at medium speed whenever you enter their line of sight. These balls do a little damage to your opponents, but tons of damage to you. Luckily, it's pretty easy to dodge them by just moving opposite their rotation whenever they shoot, and that's always the direction you want to go because they'll shoot at you over and over again in a single revolution if you're trucking along with them. I don't find this that difficult, and the balls never hit me during any of my attempts, but you can still lose to your opponents in a fair fight if you just rush in guns blazing, especially if you're Coco and your gun can't really blaze anyway because it sucks ass. Number 14, Pogo Painter. This is another one of those one mistake and you're done challenges, where if you land on even a single mushroom, you just lose. There's some wrinkles that can make this hard, like how it takes less than a second for them to spawn, and that throughout the match the amount that can be on screen at a time will gradually increase. But if a mushroom is about to spawn in a square that you're already in the process of landing on, it'll disappear, so there isn't any BS attached. As long as you keep a sharp eye out, I don't think you even need to be that careful, though you'll be tempted to just hop in place during the last 15 seconds or so to be safe, but I don't recommend that unless you're ahead by at least 40 points. You also shouldn't avoid boots just because they make it harder to avoid mushrooms, because you still need to actually win the game, so get used to the speed increase in terms of reacting to mushroom spawn. Number 13, Dragon Drop. This crystal definitely complicates things and makes them a lot more annoying, but the key to winning is still to hit as many ×5s as possible. In this challenge, you can only score from the zone that's currently flashing, so if the 2x zone is flashing, you'll have to settle for 2 points and make a shot from there. Each zone lights up for about 5 seconds before it switches randomly, and your job is to hope you have a gem and can get into position when the ×5 zone is highlighted. Remember that you can make easy guaranteed shots from there when the target is on the far left or right by facing that direction at a 90-degree angle and shooting off the back corner. And if you anticipate the rebound, you might even be able to get multiple shots in a row. But if you play this game, you know it's a gang-banging clusterfuck all the way through, so you can definitely get unlucky. Number 12, Melt Panic. Win without being able to save yourself from falling. This doesn't sound that devastating because most people will be like, well, I just won't fall then. But it actually limits a lot of offensive play as well, because if you're right at the ledge trying to knock someone over, one wrong move and you might just knock yourself over instead. This challenge is probably easier if you're Cortex, Brio, Kong, or Tiny, because you can send people pretty far with one hit and can maybe knock them off from the middle of the arena instead of the edge. But the rest of the cast will have a hard time unless they get the right power-ups, which are less likely to be positive things under Uka Uka's beam. Number 11, El Pogo Loco. This is basically Pogo Painter's challenge, but with a much larger propensity for bullshit. Ripperoo has traded his TNTs in for nitros, which explode with no countdown to speak of, and if you get hit, you instantly lose. The nitros have a 9-square radius, and he'll hop across and plant upwards of 3 or 4 in sequence at a time. Thankfully, they at least still stun your enemies, but the amount of times I got body blocked by a dude trying to box me into the radius of a nitro was ridiculous. Ripperoo doesn't give a damn. He will plop a nitro literally 1 square away from you and give you half a second to escape, and since we hop around so slow without boots, sometimes you'll just get fucked. I lost a match with 3 seconds left on the clock because I happened to be in the same corner as him and he just reached out and stamped one that covered all my options. I got checkmated by a mental kangaroo in a top hat. I did not like it. Stay out of corners, kids. Number 10, Mallet Mash. In regular Mallet Mash, your opponent can hold square for a second to make their mallet slams do a little shockwave that can stun opponents. In Crystal Mallet Mash, every mallet slam does a little shockwave that stuns you, no holding required. You, of course, do not share in this power. Otherwise, Mallet Mash is still RNG as hell, and it's all about who gets the most golden mushrooms. Remember that 1:15, 55, 35, and 15 are the times left on the clock that the golden mushrooms will spawn, give or take a few seconds in each. So stay in the middle during those times to try and have the best chance of snatching one, but the strategy of holding your mallet over it until someone else gets close to try and get more points out of it probably doesn't apply here anymore since the enemies can stun you quicker when they come by. Still, the difficulty here is artificial and random, so if you attempt it enough times, you'll eventually get lucky. Number 9, Crash Ball. No square button. They call it an extra kick. They say win without the use of the extra kick. And I feel like there's got to be a better name for what that is, the force push you do to knock balls away from you. Anyway, it's a daunting challenge and you definitely have to play differently, but it's less of an issue than I would have thought. The thing it does the most is remove your offensive agency. Like, you can't use the force to aim calculated shots. You pretty much just ricochet the ball off your bumper and it goes in whichever direction it chooses. This means you'll have a harder time getting the people at your sides out because you can't redirect shots at them, so the goal is just one of survival, and you can still functionally do that pretty well. It's like playing basketball with one hand tied behind your ass. It's a handicap for sure, but you can adjust. Number 8, Polar Panic. This is definitely the most obnoxious crystal challenge for the panic levels. The thing that usually floats around and drops power-ups through beams is now a constant stream of lightning that chases you relentlessly and shocks you if you get hit by it, to the same effect as if you were struck by the lightning power-up. Getting hit is basically a guaranteed game over. The opponents are snipers who can knock your charred body across the map into a singular gap between two pieces of ice like a shot right between the eyes, though they have difficulty deciding how to proceed if 3 of you get hit by the lightning power-up itself. Basically, you just have to wander around the area and pick a moment when an enemy attacks another enemy to swoop in and catch them by surprise, or wait for enough power-ups to get the job done that way. Number 7, Beach Ball. All your opponents have intermittent shields, and they last a while. It's one shield active at a time, swapping randomly between which enemy they give it to, and that thing will go for like 5 full seconds, which is a lot in ballistics. That could be 7 or 8 balls saved in one go if the field is cluttered. The silver lining is that even after an opponent has been dusted, the shield can still waste time being on their goal instead of an alive person. So when you're down to a 1v1, it's not actually as devastating as you might assume, but it can definitely still be a difference maker. If you're waiting for a shield to deactivate, you can try hoarding balls by holding X to launch them all at a man when this thing happens, but this only took a couple tries, so it's not that frustrating. So far, nothing in this list has been a real problem, but we'll get there. Number 6, Ring Ding. This is a one mistake or outer challenge that's actually pretty easy to mess up. If you hit a balloon that is not your color, you're donezo. With enemies constantly hitting black balloons to try to turn all the balloons their color, jumping at the wrong time is a huge fear. So you gotta glue your eyes to those black balloons like they're shopping in your convenience store. Don't let them out of your sight for a second. If an opponent is about to hit one, stay grounded and wait to see what happens, but while also going towards a black balloon yourself. The vacuum is a double-edged sword here. It can be a huge difference maker one way or the other. Either you get a big pile of balloons to pop, or someone turns them all their color while you're jumping at them and you're toast. I still recommend going for the vacuum to put distance between your score and everyone else's, which will make it easier to coast near the end and risk less, but stop jumping if someone gets to a black balloon or you might be in for a rude awakening. Number 5, Dante's Dash. We made it to the top 5, and this is where things get filled to the brim with BS. Everything before this took less than 4 or 5 tries to achieve, while this one took me at least 15. If there is a pattern or consistent interval to when he decides to do this, I have not found it. I just have to keep my head down, mind my own business, and hope that he doesn't come down when I'm in the bottom right quadrant, because that's where I seem to get hit the most. Trying to dodge him often puts me in the line of fire of everyone else, and it creates a dilemma of, should I just let it knock me off to try to avoid a worse situation on the outside ring? I don't know the answer, I just know I had to brute force this shit and bang my head against the wall until it worked. Number 4, Pogo Padlock. This one is a bit of an outlier. I actually like this challenge, and it only took me 4 tries, but I know it's because I was placed in a series of good situations, and it could have easily taken dozens. In Pogo Padlock, you cannot paint your own color. The only way to score is by stealing other people's squares by hitting them with missiles, and then breaking score crates afterwards before other people step all over them again. This is probably the biggest nerf of any crystal challenge in the game. You literally just cannot do the primary thing you're supposed to do and have to carry yourself by a mechanic intended to just be a side thing that doesn't make a huge difference. That said, I really enjoyed this challenge. After the first couple tries, I was like, what the hell, dude? My score is 0. How am I gonna beat this? But then I buckled down and really strategized. I held on to my missiles, looked for people who had big amounts of color, and hunted them down like wild game. I roasted them like pheasants upon a flame. I stole their goose and thoroughly cooked it. I beelined for every missile as soon as it dropped, aimed carefully while waiting for them to cross my path, especially if I could set up a trap where they had to pass my line of sight to get to a nearby box, and then I shot true. I had this one as my hypothesized second hardest challenge for a while in my head while I was gathering footage, but I think this one can be practiced enough to be decently good at. Number 3 is Swamp Fox. If Swamp Fox is the name, BS is the game. I ranked this the worst minigame in Crash Bash in my minigame ranking video, and the Crystal Challenge changes nothing about that. Honestly, it doesn't make too much difference, because the slow-moving torpedo that'll one-shot you if you touch it moves so slow that it almost doesn't matter that it's there, though if you're trying to slide past it, make sure your boat is oriented properly so you don't bounce off the wall and get knocked into it. Otherwise, Swamp Fox is still Swamp Fox. There's nowhere to hide, nothing to do, but hope people shoot at each other instead of you, and in the resulting 1v1, pray they've been hit more often than you before it starts and just run up and spam at them till they die. There's no strategy to take here, it's just awfully designed chaos that nobody playtested, so brute force your way through it until you get lucky. Number 2, Embolism. This is without a doubt the challenge that demands the most unadulterated skill from the player. You must be a god at ballistics in order to win, plain and simple. In this challenge, when Engine shows up, he only shoots in your direction, sometimes with just as much frequency as he did to everyone before you slept with his wife. When these sections come about, you're pretty much forced to eat a certain amount of balls in your goal depending on what's coming your way outside of what Engine is shooting at you, because you need to hunker down and stay pretty much still in front of him to block all the shots he does send. So while this is happening, random balls that enter your goal from the right side can't really be helped, because it's better to let a smaller number of them in than to abandon your post when he might light you up at any moment. The amount he sends at you is random at random timings. I've had him shoot like 8 at me in one go, and I've had him do 2 or 3 spread out with delays. As someone who is frequently incapable of picking up the force field before my opponents because I have the reaction time of a heroin addict, this challenge laid me out a dozen times before I cracked it. But it's nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to Number 1, Skyballs. Who the fuck signed off on this? Who decided it was okay to have red balls instantly destroy you and have any given hit by the opponent give the possibility of turning a normal ball into a red ball? That's really the issue. If they just made it so that red balls were red balls right out of the gate and they couldn't be turned into red balls by the opponents, this would be so much more palatable. But what happens all the goddamn time is a normal ball will fly towards one of your corners, but nearer to your opponent on the side, and then they use their force push to turn the ball red and immediately send it directly at your unsuspecting ass with actually 0 time to react. Not to mention this is happening on sky balls, so the balls are slipperier and their trajectory is harder to read, so even if you do see a red ball coming, it might be curving enough to just hit you anyway. Red balls don't score on you if you let them pass, but they also don't score on your opponents, and since so many normal balls get turned into red balls before they leave the field, your opponents lose hardly any score over time. If they let in 10 balls over the course of a full minute, 6 of those were probably red and didn't make them lose points. This is absolutely the most frustrating Crystal Challenge in the game. It's front to back nonsense, and I refuse to believe a room full of sober developers free of any substance abuse greenlit this shit. Horrendous. Still love Crash Bash though, hope it gets a remake. Well, that's gonna do it for this ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos and donate me your crystals, and I'll see you guys next time.